Okay, let's unpack this. Have you ever been sitting around, maybe controller in hand, thinking, I could totally make a video game?
Okay.
You got that killer idea,
Yeah.
mustachioed plumber saving a princess, maybe, and you've even got some funding lined up. You get your team, you get a schedule, everything feels like it's clicking into place.
Yeah.
But what if I told you from that point on, pretty much anything could go wrong?
It's so true. What sounds like, the dream job often turns into this series of what you might call mini miracles. Our source for this deep dive, Jason Schreier's Blood, Sweat, and Pixels, really, really hammers home this point. It's frankly a miracle any game gets finished.
Right, not just the small indie teams either.
Exactly. We're talking the multi-billion-dollar industry here. Developers are constantly sharing these tales from the trenches. You hear about coding binges, caffeine-fueled all-nighters, just surviving, really.
So today, we're going to pull back that curtain. We're on a mission to show you why making games is just such a huge challenge. We'll dig into some surprising facts, maybe give you a few aha moments of the games you already love. By the end, you should have a totally new appreciation for the sheer passion and cleverness behind every single title. Let's get into why getting a game from just an idea to your console is such an incredible feat. First up, let's talk about something really basic.
Yeah.
The nature of games themselves. It's not like movies, right? They're interactive.
Totally different beast.
Yeah, they have to react to your every move. If you, the player, decide to, whack a friendly robot, the game has to know instantly, is that even possible? Is the player strong enough? What noise does it make? And it even has to remember you did that so other characters react later.
Precisely. And that creates this enormous branching complexity. You just don't get that in other media.
And what's really wild is, even with all that planning, all those flowcharts, it's almost impossible to know if the game's actually going to be fun until someone, somewhere, plays it. Is that right?
Absolutely. That's the core challenge, really. Designers often, they throw out so much work. Stuff that looks amazing on paper just doesn't feel right when you actually play it.
Wow.
And it's fascinating how even the biggest, most experienced teams struggle with this. Look at Naughty Dog with Uncharted 4. They didn't just polish finished levels, they used what they called gray box prototyping.
Gray box.
Yeah, basically testing really ugly monochromatic areas, just blank slates almost, to see what felt good to play. Ideas like ballroom dancing sounded cool maybe, but they ditched it. Focused on the core mechanics that fit the game's vibe.
Right.
Like that scene where Drake and Elena argue over the old Crash Bandicoot game on the PlayStation 1, that came out of finding the right feel.
Ah, I remember that. Iconic.
Totally. But it meant animators were often cutting features they'd spend, months of work on. Painful, but apparently pretty common.
So they're building these basic, playable prototypes just to test the feel. That sounds like, wow, a lot of discipline. Throwing out months of work just because it doesn't feel fun.
Right.
But does that approach work for, smaller indie teams? Ones without Naughty Dog's huge budgets?
That's a great question. And yeah, it seems like this problem is universal. Take Yacht Club Games, the small team behind Shovel Knight. They had this philosophy, a democratization of video game design. Basically, if anyone said no to something, they all had to stop doing it.
Whoa, that sounds intense.
You can imagine. Intense debates, apparently, over tiny details, like Shovel Knight's arm movement when he stabs upwards.
Right.
Or the director, Sean Velasco, fighting really hard for a stupid, fun fishing mechanic, which actually made it in.
The fishing mechanic won.
It did. But that constant back and forth, that iteration, sometimes probably exhausting, was key to making the game fun. So the scale's different, but finding the fun, same problem.
And this whole quest for fun, it doesn't even stop when the game ships, does it? The players themselves end up shaping it.
Oh, absolutely. Josh Mascara from Blizzard talking about Diablo 3, he said they only really understood what the game was after it launched.
After.
Yeah, he said something like, within the first day, probably more people have spent more hours playing the game collectively than the entire development team did up to that point. That flood of player feedback, just like they saw with Diablo 2's expansion, Lord of Destruction, it was crucial for fixing things and making improvements after launch.
So it's less like shipping a finished box and more like launching a boat and letting the passengers help steer.
That's a great analogy. It's a living thing, adapting with its audience.
Okay, let's switch gears. Talk about tech. This industry is always on the absolute edge of technology.
It's always pushing.
I heard one developer compare making games to building a completely new camera every single time you start shooting a movie. The graphics get better, we expect more. The goalposts just keep moving.
They do, and that cutting-edge tech, it has a hidden cost. The tools developers use, often they're clunky, they're specific to that studio, sometimes they're just broken.
So even the pros are fighting their own equipment.
That's the surprising part, yeah. These tools are always different, often buggy, sometimes excruciating to work with if they lack features. The real skill, then, is taking those great ideas from paper and actually making them work amidst all that friction.
Okay, give me an example.
All right, Dragon Age. Inquisition by BioWare. Huge huddle switching to the Frostbite engine. It just wasn't built for complex RPGs.
Frostbite. That's the Battlefield engine, right?
Exactly. Good for shooters, not so much for intricate dialogues and quests. A cinematic designer, John Epler, called creating cutscenes a Sisyphean ritual. Basically, pushing a boulder uphill. Tools were buggy. Engine updates would just randomly break stuff they'd already built.
Oh, man.
Get this. One writer found only the main character could actually talk in a scene because the engine literally wouldn't hook up the lines for the other characters, the NPCs.
You're kidding. So they're battling the engine itself. And wasn't there also that whole multi-platform issue with Inquisition?
Oh, yeah. Brutal. EA, the publisher, insisted it ship on 5 platforms at once, including the old PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360.
Which were way less powerful.
Massively. They had RAM buckets, basically memory, 16 times smaller than the new consoles. 16 times. So the team had to resort to what they called well-intentioned fakery. Things like just having fewer characters on screen during battles to save memory.
Wow. Smoke and mirrors.
Pretty much. Mike Laidlaw, a veteran developer there, he later said, I probably should tried harder to kill the last-gen version of the game. Just a constant fight against limitations.
Sounds exhausting. Is this common, this tool trouble?
Absolutely. It affects everyone, even smaller teams like Obsidian making Pillars of Eternity. They had to switch their 3D graphics software midstream from Softimage to Maya, caused significant growing pains, and they learned weird little aesthetic rules for isometric games on the fly. Like, oh, you can't have tall grass because it hides the circle under the character you need to select.
Ah, never thought of that.
Or making sure floors are totally flat, otherwise the perspective gets weird and it looks like an MCS you're painting. All these tiny, unexpected hurdles.
And sometimes taking a big tech risk pays off, but brings its own problems.
Exactly right. Look at The Witcher 3. CD Projekt Red made that big gamble. They skipped the older consoles entirely. PS3, Xbox 360. Nope.
Which let them push the graphics, right?
Definitely. But that decision meant they had to do a drastic overhaul of their rendering pipeline. That's the system that turns all the game code and art into the pictures you see. And that meant the artists had to redo almost all the models they'd already finished. Huge amounts of rework, just to adapt to the tech decision they made.
So even smart choices have consequences. Okay, so we've got unpredictable fun, we've got tech hurdles, tools breaking. Given all these moving parts, it makes total sense that people say scheduling is impossible in game development.
It really is.
And that unpredictability, it often leads to this thing we hear about all the time, crunch.
Ah, crunch. Yeah, that brings us to a really important and difficult question. Is it necessary? Those months of 80, 90, 100-hour weeks, often for no extra pay.
Some people must see it as just bad management, right? Failed planning.
Some definitely do. But others, like Naughty Dog's co-president Evan Wells, argue it's, quote, the nature of an artistic endeavor where there's no blueprint for making a game. He suggested it's never going to go away.
It's a tough stance.
It is, and the stories are intense. For Uncharted 4, the director, Bruce Straley, actually rented a second apartment near the office during crunch, just to cut down his commute. He said it was to avoid danger to my life, presumably from driving while exhausted.
Renting a second apartment.
Wow. And an animator there, Amelia Schatz, she described that crunch as the worst we've ever had. Said it felt honestly very unhealthy. People on the team doubted they could even finish the game.
If it gets that bad, feeling very unhealthy, isn't there a point where studios have to find a better way, even if it feels like the nature of the work? That's dedication bordering on something else.
It's a huge ethical debate, and it speaks to the pressure. The Shovel Knight guys at Yacht Club Games, remember them? Living off savings.
Yeah.
They went through it too. 16-hour days getting ready for a PAX demo. They even carried thousands of promo flyers in their own luggage on the plane to save money on shipping.
Carrying their own flyers, that's indie spirit, but Ouch.
Yeah. And Nick Wozniak, one of the team, he remembered knowing the late-night drive-through staff at Jack in the Box just by their voices. A small detail, but it says a lot about the isolation during those times.
Wow. 16-hour days. Living lean. And then you mentioned their Kickstarter promises actually made things worse.
That's the ironic twist, their biggest mistake, they called it. They promised free stretch goals, like extra boss campaigns on Kickstarter, sounded great at the time, but those free updates ended up costing millions to actually develop, extending their crunch for years after the game was already a huge success.
Years. Because of free DLC. Wow. Good intentions leading to more pain.
Exactly. It's a real cautionary tale about promising too much in a creative field where costs can balloon unexpectedly.
And this pressure, it hits people personally.
Yeah.
You mentioned the Dragon Age designer.
Right, John Epler. Coping with burnout by driving to the same 7-Eleven every night for Cheetos, watching TV shows he'd seen 100 times, just seeking comfort in routine.
Yeah. You have to wonder how many developers have their own Cheetos ritual.
It really highlights the psychological toll. And another amazing little story from Inquisition, Patrick Weeks, one of the writers, his 9-year-old son found a critical bug
His son. How?
by just messing around in the game, repeatedly getting on and off a horse. Turns out doing that made the companion's gear just disappear.
No way. A 9-year-old on a virtual horse finds a major bug. That's not in any QA test plan, I bet.
Probably not. It perfectly shows how unpredictable bugs can be. And then Mark Dara, the lead, he had the lovely job of sorting through thousands of bugs like that, deciding which ones had to be fixed before launch. Imagine that list.
Okay, so it's not just tech, it's not just time. There's the human element, too. Creative clashes, publisher demands.
Absolutely. That's the final piece, maybe. You've got internal team dynamics, people with different visions for the game. And then you've got these external forces like publishers. Publishers tend to be, well, conservative. They like established franchises and sequels, stuff that's proven to sell. They're often wary of new ideas, new IP.
Which must break developers' hearts sometimes.
Often does. And it leads to serious conflict. Take Halo Wars. Ensemble Studios, great studio, known for Age of Empires, had this cool original console RTS idea, codenamed Phoenix. Microsoft, the publisher, basically forced them to scrap it and reskin it as a Halo game.
Ouch. How did the team take that?
One designer, Graham Devine, was heartbroken. Said he had to Google the Halo story just to figure out what it was. He compared it to telling a new mother to go swap her infant for a better-looking one.
That harsh. Do they fight back?
Oh, yeah. There were loud fights internally about core game mechanics, like this rule of 8 units thing. Massive struggles. And get this, their big E3 demo. It was entirely built for E3. Fake code, basically, not real gameplay.
Wow.
And the final twist. Microsoft shut the studio down later anyway. People were crowded around a list taped to a wall trying to see if they'd made the cut for a potential new studio Microsoft was forming. Just a miserable scene, apparently.
That's brutal. What about when studios try to be independent? Like Bungie after leaving Microsoft.
Good example. They declared their independence, right? But then they partnered with Activision for Destiny and faced new pressures. Marty O'Donnell, their famous audio director, he publicly clashed with Activision over a trailer. It used music he didn't compose, what he called counterfeit trailer music.
And that didn't end well.
No. He was eventually fired. He also strongly disagreed with a big story reboot, led by a group he called the Iron Bar, which he felt ostracized the original writers. He thought the reboot was impossible and would just cause a death march for the team.
Death march. Shh. Strong words. Was there financial pressure too?
Huge. There was apparently a massive $2.5 million bonus tied to the game, getting a 90 or higher score on Metacritic. That kind of money definitely influences decisions.
$2.5 million.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see how that would create pressure.
Ah.
So big publishers cause issues. Independence has its own challenges. What about projects that just, well, die?
Happens all the time, even to promising ones. Remember Star Wars 1313? LucasArts was working on it.
Vaguely, yeah.
Yeah.
Looks cool. Kind of Uncharted in Star Wars.
Exactly, the inspiration. They wanted to blend high-end movie tech from ILM Next Door with gaming. They even tried this rigorous Nintendo approach to pre-production, really nailing down the core gameplay first. But Disney bought Lucasfilm, and the game got canceled. The director's farewell email blamed redirections, interference, unstable management, just fizzled out.
Such a shame. Lots of heartbreak stories here. But there must be cases where studios find a different way.
Definitely. Look at Obsidian again. After a different project got canceled, they were in deep financial trouble, facing layoffs. They turned to Kickstarter for Pillars of Eternity. Their CEO, Fergus Urquhart, admitted it felt like desperation at the time.
But it worked, right?
It worked incredibly well. It was a direct appeal to their fans saying, help us make this game. And the fans came through, saved the studio, and let them make the game they wanted without the usual publisher interference. A real win for community power.
That's great to hear. And even successful studios have to make compromises based on player feedback or design challenges.
Always adapting. CD Projekt Red with The Witcher 3. Initially, they wanted 3 big open regions players could explore freely, but they realized that might overwhelm people, especially without level scaling, something RPG fans often dislike. Remember Oblivion.
Ah, right. So what do they do?
They opted for a more linear progression. Velen first, then Novigrad, then Skellige. It was a design choice made to guide the player experience better. And even with huge success, they stuck to their rebel identity. No microtransactions, focusing on big expansions instead of small DLC, trying to prove they valued players.
Balancing success and principles. And this whole journey, this struggle, it's not just big teams, is it? What about solo developers?
Right. Eric Barone, who made Stardew Valley, he worked almost entirely alone for nearly 5 years. Incredible dedication.
5 years solo. Wow.
But then success hit. And he talked about this unexpected psychological weight. He called it the guilt of the video game millionaires. Felt like he was thrown into this crazy world, that he was just a guy who got lucky, led to burnout, needing to take a break from his own creation.
Even hitting the jackpot has a dark side. The human cost is always there.
It seems so. That intense personal investment, it doesn't just vanish with fame or money.
So, after all this, what does it mean for you listening? We've seen the sheer difficulty, right? The tech problems, the money worries, the huge emotional and physical toll on the creators. That imaginary plumber game you thought up, if it were real, it probably was shipped late, cost way more than planned, and pushed its team to the absolute brink.
Yeah, stepping back, you see, it's not just about like individual mistakes. There are these inherent complexities where art meets tech meets business meets psychology. It's messy. But through all the turbulence, all the crunch, all the unadulterated bullshit, to use Schreier's phrase, there's still this unshakable belief that making games is worth it.
An incredible amount of passion.
Just unbelievable passion, dedication, maybe even irrational optimism sometimes.
It really is. And like Schreier put it, it often feels like you're watching a room full of developers setting themselves on fire just to create these experiences for us. So here's a thought to leave you with. Knowing how much struggle, how much sweat and pixels go into every single game, how might that change the way you look at the next big blockbuster you're waiting for? Or even that tiny indie game you stumble across? Does knowing the fight make the final game feel different, maybe even more special? Something to think about until our next deep dive.